here we are in Kaiser, Oregon, and we're visiting with my good friend and comrade Danny Dietz. And Danny and I served in Vietnam in 1969, and we went through a lot of stuff together. That was a time of the war that it just seems like one thing after another. And so, Danny, first of all, thank you so much for bringing me back into your home again,
Hey,
and
it's a pleasure.
taking the opportunity to chat with you. And I'm going to kind of start out easy. I'm just going to ask you some simple questions just to get us warmed up a little bit. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Anchorage, Alaska, and lived in Anchorage up until I was 11 years old, 12 years old, and from there we moved to Eugene, Oregon, and that's basically where I finished growing up, and I've been in Oregon ever since.
Okay. And what's your date of birth?
I was born March 26th, 1950.
Okay. And did you volunteer for the Army or were you drafted?
I was drafted.
Okay. And just give me a little bit of background on that. What were you doing in life and so forth? And what was the occasion when all of a sudden you got a letter?
Well, I just got out of high school, and right after we got out of high school, and actually in junior high school, I met my future wife. Never knew that was going to happen, and right after high school, my wife, or Janice, and I got married in July, and I was planning on going to school. I was going to community college at the time. I was already enrolled because I was taking classes while I was in high school. I wanted to be a mechanic, and so we were going to start our life, and along about August or so, I got my draft notice, and that was back before the lottery system, as you know.
Was there any marriage deferments at that time, or did you have to have a kid?
Uh, they were dropping a lot of the deferments.
Okay.
They dropped. I think at that time they dropped the educational deferment, and they dropped the marriage deferment,
Okay.
and they even dropped some age because they were saying, well, we're not drafting anybody unless they're 19 years old, but at that point it was. They were reaching out and they were drafting a lot of young guys.
How old were you when you got your letter?
18 years
Oh,
old.
so you were 18.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I don't know if you remember, but we were when we were in Vietnam. That's where I turned 19 on
Yep.
the Cambodian border.
I do remember that. Yeah, because to me, you guys were just kids
Yeah.
coming in. You know, all you guys when you came in, and I felt like I was about 100 years old, and you guys come in and you just look so young to me.
Hmm.
You know, you just look like a bunch of kids coming in. So, you and Janice are what, living in an apartment or?
Right.
Okay, you get this letter, you open it up and you read it, and it suddenly occurs to you that your life was probably never going to be the same. Tell me a little bit about how you felt.
Uh, for me, and I don't know whether I don't know how she grasped it, but I kind of had the expectation that I would be drafted.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I had a brother that was in Germany. I had that was my oldest brother. He was drafted, went to Germany. My next older brother, he's drafted, and at the time he was going through advanced infantry training up at Fort Lewis, and he went to Vietnam. And then I got my draft notice, and there was, at the time I thought, well, he's in Vietnam, so I probably won't go. And I didn't choose a an MOS, and well, I chose some MOSs, but then they pick and choose where you want,
Of course.
where they were going to put you, and because it's kind of interesting. Let me back up here a little bit, and it took me a while to recognize this, and it wasn't until probably after I got out of off of active duty, but there was some discrimination in the military because right on your service number you had a prefix. You had a U.S. for a draftee. You had a RA if you were if you volunteered and you enlisted yourself, and then they had the NG and the AR for Army Reserve and National Guard. And so everybody that got if you had an RA, you were getting the preference of job skills.
Exactly.
And so when you look at all of the guys that went through the infantry line, they were all the US, AR, and NG guys.
And of course, we later found out the U.S. stood for unstable. So, yeah. Where did you go to basic?
I went to basic and AIT at Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay, so you weren't far away. You didn't have to go very far then.
No, no.
So, and I got to just back up just a little bit because it's intriguing to me that you were married so young. Here's your Janice, and you're drafted.
I know.
I mean, gosh, that had to have been kind of a tugging, I would think it would bother you a lot.
Well, it did because, you think that, okay, I've got a young wife at home. I'm young too, and we figured we'd be growing up together. I mean,
Yeah.
which we did, but it just, we had a year and a half break in there that I'm gone, and basically it was from the time I went to basic through AIT and came back from Vietnam. It was a year and a half before we started hanging our clothes in the same closet again.
For heaven's sake. Yeah, and of course, we know now in hindsight that you were one of the guys that did not get a Jody letter.
I must have done something right.
What's a Jody letter?
It was a song that we used to sing, and Jody was the guy back home that was taking care of your girlfriend
Or wife.
or wife.
So, what memories do you have of basic or AIT? What sticks out?
Well, it was, I mean, for me, I went through high school. I didn't do sports or anything else, and it was challenging for me. Because, first of all, you got somebody telling you what to do, where to go, when to get up, and but obviously I had some self-motivation going into it. But it was it was a whole different lifestyle, and it was kind of interesting. And one of the big memories that I have is that my wife had come up, Janice would come up to visit, and it wasn't like we got to leave. We didn't get leave in basic training.
Right.
And so what they do is they take us to a big auditorium, and back then Fort Lewis was the old Fort Lewis that was built during World War II. And it was the old wooden barracks and everything, the theaters and the stuff that they have was the old World War II construction that they just maintained as much as they could. At least now they had insulation in them and different heating systems, but we still had to do fire watch because the furnaces would sometimes catch on fire, so they had to have somebody on duty to.
I can't believe what you just said. My next question was can you tell us what Firewatch was all about?
Right.
Because nobody knows that.
Right.
If you weren't there, civilian people have no concept of what that is. Go ahead and just briefly tell us what.
Well, back in the old days, I mean, they had wood-burning stoves and things like that, and you had to keep fire going.
Yeah.
But then as things started changing over to oil heat and things like that, these are old wooden barracks, and they'd throw one of these whole barracks up in a day.
Oh, yeah.
And so you kind of wonder what the construction
Yep.
is of them, which really wasn't a whole lot because when they originally built them, they had no insulation. It was open frame construction, stud wall construction through the wall, and big open bays. And I can't remember what they said. They said if they catch on fire, they'd take them about 3 minutes to burn.
Awful. Yeah.
I know.
So, and I was at Fort Ord, and they were the same exact thing. Those barracks were, and they were usually 2-story. So the people on top had one ladder. Remember or one thing at the end of the barracks, and if you didn't get out that way, you were pretty well sunk. So okay, you're done. Your graduation from AIT, and you certainly know where you're going. And what was it like when, with you and Janice when you?
Well, we can back up a little bit, but so anyway, graduated out of basic, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go somewhere different. I'm going to get to go to someplace else and do my AIT somewhere. My oldest brother, he became a communications guy, so
Yes.
he was doing radio teletype stuff in Germany, and then my other brother, he got to go to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and Tiger Country.
Oh yes.
And so from there, he went to Vietnam, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I might get to be reassigned, but my reward from graduating from basic training was to throw my duffel bag over my shoulder, walk across the parade field to my new barracks.
No, somebody that we interviewed this week stayed at right there, and they said they walked across the parade field, just like what you said. That was it.
That was
they
it.
Just from there to there, and we were here.
So you had the basic training on one side of the North Fort Lewis, and then you had all of the AIT, infantry AIT
Sure.
on the other side.
Sure. What one thing about AIT do you remember?
Well, first thing is we transitioned from the M14, which we had in basic training, to the M16, the first original M16 with the forked muzzle suppressor,
Open, yeah.
open, and no forward assist for the bolt. But the biggest thing that hit me is we all knew we were going to Vietnam, and I left for Vietnam in February, and in that January, we went through our Vietnam orientation. They had the VC village set up, and we went through the VC village in 4.5 feet of snow. But it was realistic training.
Wow. So you kissed your young wife goodbye
Yep.
at an airport, I'm assuming.
We flew out of Boeing Field,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah.
Well,
that's-
I know what it was like when I left. When my mom and dad and sister were there. I remember it was the first time I ever saw my dad cry, and so I know the emotions. I'm sure that Janice was just like, wow.
and I don't remember. I think she's a pretty stand-up girl,
Yeah.
and but I knew where I was going. Didn't know whether I was coming back.
See you later.
Next time I saw her was in Hawaii for
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
for R&R.
Yeah, you lucky married guys got to go to Hawaii.
I know.
The rest of us had to go to Hong Kong or
Thailand.
Bangkok.
Well, yeah.
When did you get to Vietnam?
I got there in February of 1969.
Okay, and what was your impression when they opened the door of that plane and you got out and first step in Vietnam? What do you remember?
Well, my first impression was when they opened and I was back towards the back of the airplane, and on the back side of the wings. And the thing that I remembered is that when they opened the door, and it's kind of like these movies where you see the backflash in a fire, where the fire just comes.
Yes.
I tell you what, it was just like the heat. You just got slammed in the face. I came from an Arctic situation in Fort Lewis, Washington, to the heat and the humidity of Vietnam.
I tell people you were instantly wet.
Oh yeah,
I mean, you were,
I don't think I stopped sweating for a month.
wow. And so then you went to the reception station.
At Long Binh,
Mm-hmm.
and so spent a couple of days there, and from there I was transferred to Cu Chi, and went to their replacement depot, and they worked pretty quickly, and it was I think we were just there for a day, and I was assigned to Charlie Company, and packed up my stuff, took us to company headquarters. They got us all situated in the barracks and getting ready to start assigning us, and that was the night that Cu Chi got hit. So, day one assigned to Charlie Company.
Had you been issued a weapon yet?
No.
Yeah, I was thinking that. And you were in a little, what they called hooches, but it was wood about 4 feet up and then screen.
Screen all the way up.
Yep, and so you're in there on a cot,
Uh-huh.
and all kinds of stuff starts happening.
Right. And it was really kind of interesting because they tunneled in
Oh,
to
yeah.
Cu Chi. And
And that's
they
the
took
night that they blew up the helicopters?
yeah, it was night and in the morning and daylight when when we finally get up and start moving around, and we weren't asleep, but it kept us in the bunkers and stuff. And when things started slowing down and we started shaking out the cobwebs and things, come out and you realize, oh my God, we're in a war, because you look out, you can see the flames of the airstrip, because they got the airstrip, they got the fuel depot. I mean, you look out there and it's just like, oh my God.
When they told you you were going to be in the second platoon, did they tell you anything about what the Wolfhounds were doing, or what, where we were at, or what we were doing?
Yes. And we knew it was just after Firebase Diamond got hit. And I think you guys got hit like 12th, 13th, somewhere around in there. And
23rd.
23rd, okay. And then so by the time we were coming back, or being replaced, you guys were recovering from that, and they were getting us trained up.
That's a good way of putting it, because there was only 8 of us left.
I know.
After that, and recovering Trang Bang, they put us there, and there was only enough of us to man one bunker, and it was right in front of the 8-inch mix.
Mm-hmm.
And when those things would go off at night, man, it was just the ground.
I think my hearing problems are exactly from that.
Oh,
I remember that.
That was awful.
But anyway, you guys, they brought you in for stand down at Tain Inn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we hooked up with you guys. And then we started running some.
Back up just a minute. What was your first impression of us?
Oh my God! Well, we got the story. You guys just got your asses kicked out on Diamond. The platoon was decimated, and there was 6 or 7 or 8 of us that were specifically assigned to second platoon.
I remember.
Ed Clennon, and I can't tell you the names of the others.
Mike Lozon.
Okay.
Mike the Kid, remember?
Right.
Mike the Kid Lozon was one of them.
And I think that was the time when Crabtree came in.
Yep.
And
yeah, it was.
Was it Dunnick and
Yep.
And that whole crew.
Yep.
Anyway,
Manarelli,
yeah. Well,
Garcia came in right then.
So anyway, we were the replacements for everybody that didn't make it through Diamond.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the wounded and killed, and so back in the back of our minds is hey, this is what we're going to. I mean, you guys were the battle ready guys. I mean, battle hardened guys. And
did we look battle hardened when you saw us? Did we look like we'd?
Yeah, you look. Yeah. You had that far away look. You had that 1,000-yard stare. You all did.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't want anything to do with us. It was hard to break through the barrier.
Mm-hmm. And I've told this story many, many times. I didn't want to know your name, your girlfriend's name, your dog's name, surely not your mother's name, because as far as I was concerned, you weren't going to be here that long.
Right.
And all of us that were left there kind of felt the same way. So at first we didn't treat you guys very well. We didn't give you exactly a warm welcome to Vietnam, and especially into the second platoon. And it was very shortly thereafter, Ray and I were talking, and we said, this is going to get us nothing. Because if we don't teach these guys, they're going to get us all killed anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you want to do? You want to go out shooting, or do you want to just have a bunch of guys out there stepping on booby traps and killing everybody?
Right.
And so that's when we actually kind of did a turnaround, and then we embraced you guys and actually said, okay,
It's time.
We're going to show you, guys, what it's all about.
Right.
And do you remember the very first time you set out a Claymore?
I did. Yeah.
And because now that Claymore bag was yours and it was real. In basic and AIT, you never.
They were dummies.
Oh, I mean, there was, and I'm sure one of us told you, don't put the darn blasting cap in it till you get it out there and get it set up.
Right.
And so you don't blow yourself up and so forth. But that's something I remember. I remember the very first Claymore I set out, and man, I was nervous, and it was dark, and Sergeant Glover had said, whatever you guys do, make sure that you point it out, not toward, don't point it back to you guys. And so yeah, that first Claymore seems to have been kind of a mile marker,
Right.
in most guys' career.
And then it became second nature. I mean, you just started doing it.
Yep.
But yeah, it seemed like all of a sudden. I mean, especially as a new guy, it's now okay. You got the security of the platoon,
Yep,
and you want me to walk out there 30 yards by myself?
by yourself,
And
and especially in the middle of the night.
right.
That was the fun part. What job were you assigned when you first got to the platoon?
You guys had me walking point.
That was I don't
And that
know
was-
if I told you, that was another new guy thing that we came up with.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We didn't do that for,
I figured after it was all over with, I figured we were expendable.
Well, we used another word, but that's okay. It's probably all in about the same. So you were walking point. Do you remember who else was with you?
I think, well, Ed Clinton and I walked point together a lot.
Yeah.
And then I remember I had Rudy Deanda walking flank, and I think Dunnick, because he was a big guy, all of a sudden he became the M79 guy.
And he was my right flank. He was the guy that was always out on the right.
Okay.
And I've thought about that many times. That flank is not a fun
No.
place to be. And yet, old Dunnick, he never complained or never said a thing. He just, and most of the time when we were in vegetation, you couldn't even see him.
No.
So, yeah, pretty gutsy thing. When we were at Tain Inn when you joined us,
Right.
where did we go from there? What's our mission? What were we doing? We've got a bunch of new guys, and now we're going to go somewhere, do something. What do you remember we were doing?
Well, we actually ran a few operations out of Tain Inn,
Okay.
and I think it was, I know they were training missions for us because they were pretty easy. We did some patrols that we did during the day, and then we did some pretty easy, not too far out ambush patrols. And I don't know who I was next to. I mean, it was one of the older guys that I was next to, and it was one of the funny stories that I remember while I was there is that we're out in the middle of nowhere in the elephant grass. It's got an ambush patrol set up, and all of a sudden you could hear a couple of jets coming. They're coming low and fast, and then all of a sudden there's this big flash and a boom. And I'm like, oh my God, they're shooting at him. And whoever was next to me cracked up and laughed. And he says, no, you dumbass. He says, they're taking pictures.
Yes. No, that's right. No, that's right.
Because it was like,
It
boom.
was a big It
boom,
was a big flash.
boom,
Oh yeah. You know what? I'd forgotten about that.
And
They
it
were,
just,
they were taking pictures of what?
Of the
off
ground.
the ground, they were taking recon photos.
And why was it booming?
It's just, that was the
Light.
flash bulb.
Light.
Oh, you heard like a
Oh.
No, what they would do is the lead plane would drop the flash.
Oh.
And the second plane was the camera plane.
Oh.
And it was taking the pictures. And so all of a sudden you get a flash and a boom, and here comes the other plane. And then you'll think back on all of the war movies that you've seen is, okay, they're shooting flak at these guys.
Huh.
Yep.
But
And not to mention the fact your night vision was gone for the next half hour.
right. And you got some old guy that's been sitting right next to you, and they're just laughing their ass off. It's like we're on an ambush patrol, trying to be quiet, and you make some stupid comment like, "Oh my God, they're shooting at him."
When did you experience your first firefight?
I think it was at a Tain Inn or Trang Bang, I can't remember which, and that was when Jack Slovey got hit. Jack Slovey and Alabama.
And they were walking point.
They were walking
Yep,
point.
yep, that's right. What? How did you react?
I did what you told me to do, and you and me and several other guys went up and recovered both of them, and and
Did some shooting?
no, we weren't. As a matter of fact, somebody else was by then. It was a sniper.
Oh
off
yeah,
in the,
yeah, yeah.
'cause it
Yeah,
wasn't-
that's right. No, you're
it
right.
wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't a. We didn't get caught. I mean, we got caught in an ambush, but it was single sniper
Yeah.
picking people off.
Yeah, yeah.
And so anyway, we just going through, and he was still shooting,
Yeah.
but
And then medevac,
medevaced him out.
was
both
that
of 'em out.
was that an interesting experience?
It was.
To hear and see, and I always said one of the scariest moments of a guy's life is when the medevac's coming in at night,
Exact. Oh yeah.
because everybody knew that was a dead duck right there, and
Mhm.
you didn't want to. Hopefully, you weren't close enough when that happened that you'd get it too. But that was always just a real scary moment. And then when they did get off and get going, it was like a huge relief.
Oh yeah.
Huge relief. And do you remember specifically when we were out when one of the guys got hurt?
Like
Booby trap.
booby trap. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Matias Herrera, Ed Kleinen,
Lieutenant Ide.
Lieutenant died. And then I can't remember the older guy that came in after me. That he was like 30 years old. But he ended up he caught a booby trap.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember, but I tripped 2 booby traps.
Mm-hmm.
Never. And
Yep. I did.
and fortunately for me, both of them were delay, and I was able to get out of the way.
And I stepped on one going out on hit a wire going out on an ambush patrol one night.
Yeah.
And I heard and luckily it was an old Chicom, and I heard the pop,
Mm-hmm.
and I literally jumped 10 feet. You know how in the Olympics where a stand and then you jump,
Right.
standing long jump or whatever they call it, or whatever, and I did 10 feet down, and it didn't go off.
Yeah.
And I just remember the adrenaline,
Oh yeah.
and now nobody knows. I mean, it's at night, no, and they heard the rustling and probably, I don't know, they probably heard my breath accelerate to about 100 miles an hour, but you don't know you don't know what's going on.
Oh yeah.
I was going to ask, did you ever, another veteran, and you probably would never talk about this, but did you ever have a moment where you felt like this is too much, or I just can't do this anymore? Did you ever have any meltdown moments where you were just overwhelmed, or I'm sure you were overwhelmed, but where you saw somebody get killed and you just said, I got to get out of here? Did you ever have any rough moments like that?
Yeah, I think we all did. I don't know that I had any one. John tells a story that it's sometimes I had a queasy stomach, and sometimes didn't feel good, and he'd always throw me a bottle of Pepto-Bismol or something. And but yeah, there's times when I think everybody goes through that, and we all do, and it doesn't change.
It's just
And
you deal with it.
you-
Some guys deal with it one way, and other guys do it different. So
And and the thing is the stress of that too is that you don't take care of yourself the way you should. And as you know, John, I got dusted off a couple of times for heat issues.
oh yes, yes.
And I mean, we're drinking skanky water. You don't want to drink it. You don't drink enough. You're out there in the heat. You're doing a hard push. You go to Crockett and you eat some crummy food, and everybody's got
Dysentery.
and I mean, you just end up dehydrated. And I think twice I got dusted off, and it sucks. And so again, I don't. You're always apprehensive when you're out. You don't know what's going to happen every time. Even in the wire, you don't know what's going to happen. Shamrock is a perfect example.
Mm-hmm. Which was one of the Army's biggest blunders ever.
Oh, Shamrock, or
Yeah.
all the little
Shamrock,
hard spots
where they put
where they put that. That was horrible.
unbelievable.
I mean, everybody looking at that. Well, I mean, when Ed Clinton and I mean, when we got hit out there, we came up on that narrow opening into that field, into the rice paddies,
Yep.
and we stopped. And we said, "This isn't good." I said, no, keep pushing on, and that's when we got hit.
And I won't interrupt the interview again. But
It's okay.
No,
No.
keep up.
Some of you guys in earlier interviews said that you would walk sometimes 10, 15, 20 miles a day.
I don't know if that's
Usually not
clicks,
that.
maybe clicks, but
Yeah.
I mean, we had some pretty long. But the way a lot of the patrols were set up is that you would go out on a patrol and you do a short stint, and then you kind of set up an overwatch position and
Is
wait,
that like a
kind of
mile?
kind of like a daytime
Is that like 3
daytime,
miles, a mile?
Oh, it could have been.
shorter?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
and so then you even set up a daytime ambush, and then you'd go on another patrol, set up another daytime ambush, and then during this whole time, what you're doing is you're scoping out where your night ambush is going to be.
Oh, I see.
And so basically, you scope it out, and you know where your night ambush is going to be, and you kind of bypass it, and you kind of fake where you're going to go,
Exactly.
and then you end up back there at night because you don't want to just go in and
Give your
plop down.
position, yeah.
Plus,
and it was
it's
the same
nice,
thing.
It's nice to know what the ground looks like there.
Oh yeah,
You
where your
know.
fields of fire were and what you were doing.
Exactly.
And
Sorry about that. Did you you brought to my memory about 7 or 8 interviews ago? Dad brought up these special force guys that were these hidden. I can't remember the name. They were special forces, and they were by the Cambodian border with you one night.
Oh, that was
Oh,
the
yeah.
Mountain Yards.
Were you there when the Mountain Yards were there? Do you
Yeah, when they
remember
came
them?
through Firebase Diamond,
Were
or
you-
what was it,
Yeah,
Diamond
yeah.
2 or 3
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
Do you remember them?
I do, and what's really amazing, and I tell you what, and so that you guys know, I got into Special Forces after I got back and came back from Vietnam. Got recruited by a Reserve Special Forces unit and went through the training and did all the stuff I was supposed to do. But one of the things that really stuck in my mind was that day when they came through. And here comes this Special Forces captain, Special Forces senior NCO. No, they're not wearing their green berets when they're doing this.
No.
But these guys look like they have been out in the field forever.
Yeah.
And then they've got 15, 20 mountain yards behind them. And these guys have chickens and all these things hanging over their shoulder. Live chickens. Because that's what they eat. They're out in the fields, and that's their sea rations.
Yeah.
And this is a ragtag, battle-hardened group of people.
Well, it looked like 2 giants and a bunch of midgets.
Oh, it's amazing. They were just, and you look at and it's kind of funny because you look at these guys, and this was at the time that the Green Beret came out with John Wayne, and we saw that in basic training.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, that was one of those things, and Barbarella.
Nobody forgets Barbarella.
And so anyway, these guys are the gods of the battlefield, and that's what you think of them. And I'm jumping ahead, and that was one of the things when I met a guy by the name of John Bash that recruited me into Special Forces.
Wow, what a small world.
And I'm thinking, these guys are. I'm not cut out for that. And
Well, and because it was interesting, I wanted to hear your take because other guys said that it was one of the best nights they ever had in Vietnam because these guys set up a perimeter around you and said, "Hey guys,
we got
go
you.
to sleep.
Yeah.
Hey guys, you don't, and a couple guys couldn't handle the because they'd be firing and shooting and engaging, and they said, "Guys, we got you. Just rest." So interesting how you were. I just was. Thanks for sharing that. I wanted to know.
Oh, it was amazing to watch those guys come because we're out there, and it was daytime when they came through, and it looked. I mean, they were coming in from the Cambodian side
Yeah.
of Diamond, and you could see them coming forever. And because we had great fields of fire out there, but
And the thing that I remember about that E7 is he was talking to us, and he said, "Now just remember, this is my place. This is my ground. This is my area." And so nothing goes on here that I don't remember that.
Yeah,
and I thought,
well, I don't remember
but
because
I
you guys
thought-
had we had the perimeter and we were watching them come in,
and I just
so we
thought-
didn't have that interaction.
And I just thought, man, that guy's cocky.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was his ground. It was his area, and those mountain yards knew every square foot, everything.
Right.
And yeah, that was just amazing, absolutely amazing. Now there was you and Ed Clennon walked point.
We did.
And there was an incident that happened where you guys actually got a sniper tried to pick you guys off. Do you remember when Ed got hit in the helmet? That.
Well,
incident?
it wasn't a sniper. It was we actually walked into an ambush.
Okay.
And Ed and I were walking point, and I was, and it's kind of interesting because Ed wrote a very good letter to his brother, and I got a copy of that, and it described what I remembered of happening. And we were on patrol, and we were coming through. We were kind of like out in the open and following a hedge line coming in, and we came into a bottleneck. And the thing about a bottleneck like that is it's a choke point, and it's not a good feeling. And you figure that's a place. If something's going to happen, it's going to happen there. And we stopped. We took a look, and I don't know. You came up, and Marquez came up, and kind of looked around and scoped it out a little bit. And said, "No, we're going to go through." And so Ed and I took off, and we started heading in. And about this time, the whole platoon got into the clearing. Ed and I were clear out in front, and we're coming up on the next hedgerow, and it was probably 50 yards, 60 yards ahead of us. And it was just like the whole world just came unglued. I mean, it just automatic weapons fire, machine gun fire, RPGs, and we're pinned down out there. There's nowhere to go, absolutely nowhere to go. We got bullets flying over our head from our side. We got bullets flying overhead from the other side, and it's just. And it seemed like we were there for hours, and it was quite a while. We were
Yes,
there.
it was. I never asked you this before, but laying out there with Clennon, did you guys ever look at each other and say this could be it?
No, because we were too far away. Because when we were walking point, we were quite a ways away from each other.
But did you think that to yourself?
Oh, I thought my life was over. I wasn't. How am I? And I'm thinking, okay, what can I do here? And this is one of and I'm sure Ed went through the same thing. Is like, what can you do out here? If you move,
Play dead.
they're gonna see you. If you stand up, you don't know who's gonna shoot you.
Yep.
But something's gonna happen, and because you could kind of take a look and see what's going on, and you can see where the fire's coming from, but you can't do anything.
And I'm going to give you our perspective behind you.
Okay.
We assumed you were both dead.
Right. And
No, we assumed. Boom! That thing opened up, and you guys went down. We assumed both of you were headshot.
Yeah. And
you were smart, by the way, just laying there. Because if you'd have got up on your hands and knees or tried,
Oh, yeah.
it would have been. You would have not walked out of there.
So anyway, as the things progressed, as that particular ambush went, we laid out there for some time, and they started artillery came in, started calling artillery, and then called in for an airstrike because that wasn't doing anything. I guess that was my take on it.
Yep.
And whoever that Bronco pilot was, and I think you had him at one of the reunions.
Yep.
He hit the and he came right in where their ambush was set up, and hit it with the marker rockets, and all of a sudden the smoke's blowing our way, and it's like, if I've got a shot, this is my shot, and I took it, and I scrambled back, and I I come bouncing over the top of a rice paddy berm. And Sergeant Marquez is in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I come rolling over there and just clambering over there, and he's got this surprise. You know what he was doing? He was making coffee. There was a lull, and he's making a cup of coffee.
Sure, sure.
You know how he did that?
Oh, I absolutely.
And it was like, so I'm in
Cool-
amazement
cool
that
hand Luke.
here's Marquez sitting there, and he's got his canteen cup because there's a lull because they're waiting for the fast movers and nothing's going on, and he has to make a cup of coffee. But anyway, and I comes clambering over the top of the berm, and he looks at me, and he's got a surprised look at it, and he says, "God damn it, Dietz!" He says, "I thought you dead."
Yep.
And it was like, well, I'm here.
Here we go.
And it wasn't 30 seconds later, here comes Clinton, clambering over the same berm. Guess what Marquez said?
Same thing.
"God damn it, Clinton! I thought you dead." And I gotta love Marquez, and
I was going to ask you what you remembered about him. So that's pretty. You're just one step ahead of me here.
he's I gotta say him, Brandow, you guys. I mean, you guys are my heroes.
Well,
You got us. I mean, you got us through this, and then on top of that, you take it the next step. I learned so much from you guys, and and while I didn't take advantage of it there, later on in my military career and my police career, that stuff played big dividends, John. I mean, learning. You don't get this stuff in a classroom.
yeah, it's
And-
OJT all the way.
And there's it's the best leadership course anybody could ever go through. I don't recommend it.
Yeah. I remember, and I can speak for you on this, one of the worst days of our life was when Ed Clennon stepped on that 105 after Matthias, who was walking in front of me, put his foot over the berm and slid his heel down and hit a 105, blew his leg off. And we looked to the left, and this is what has always haunted me. Ed Clennon was carrying the radio for Marquez. He volunteered that day to do it because Marquez's RTO had to go to Cucci. And Marquez said, "Would somebody carry my?" And Clennon goes, "Yeah, I'll do it." And Clennon had never strapped a radio on his back before. I mean, never. And then the circumstances of him walking across that open field, and then boom, he gets blown up. That actually was one of the worst.
Oh yeah.
And I'll never forget when we got back to Jackson. I don't think there was a word spoken for hours. I mean, everybody just wanted to be by themselves, it seemed like. And, and all I could think of is he didn't belong here. He was good.
Well-
He was too good. A man. I mean, he just did not,
Well, be honest, John. None of us should have been. I mean, you think about combat, and you think, do we really need to be here? And you think that, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but and I think everybody goes through this in war. Is this necessary?
yeah.
And but Ed, I understand what you said about Ed, but look at everybody else there. It's like
I know.
we were all. I mean, we didn't have a choice. We were
Yeah.
there.
I guess what blew my mind was everybody in Ed's family was clergy,
Right.
Catholic priest or Catholic nun. And you knew the backstory because you and I were pretty close to Ed.
Uh-huh.
He was going to be a Jesuit priest,
I know.
and then the call he didn't feel like he had the call. And so,
That's just,
is there something funny?
no, because he was tight-laced when he got to Vietnam, and after about a week, he
Well, no,
wasn't
I mean,
so
this guy
anymore.
just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
I
then,
do.
and then, so then, when he dropped out of that, that's when he got drafted because he lost that college deferment. So, but I always thought that I thought, Clennon, you're just too good to be here. So,
Yeah.
and this takes me to who became your closest buddies?
Well, I mean, Ed Clennon and you know, and I think because Jim Brandau was our squad leader,
Yeah.
and and get to know him, but Lanny Ross and
Yep.
Ray Bourgeois.
Yep.
Ray's a little weird, but I mean, I don't. He was kind of to him, not weird, but he was more to himself. But when you broke through the ice, he was great.
Yeah, but he was angry.
Yeah, but he'd bury himself in a book.
Were you ever with him in a firefight when he put his hand up?
Huh.
You know why that was?
Wanted to get shot.
He and I had been there for so long, and we saw so many guys
Yeah.
get the $1 million wound, and you actually become jealous. You actually start thinking, why can't I get one of those? I've been out here long enough. Why can't I? Don't want anything too bad. I don't want to blow my leg off. Don't get me wrong. But how about just one of those old Chi-Coms that breaks your ankle?
Yeah.
So that just didn't happen. Ray never. I mean, and he was so frustrated and angry that he would put his hand up with the hopes that a round would go through his hand, and then that would be his $1 million. Well, that never happened, and he just kept getting madder and madder as it went on.
But I don't know that I got real close with anybody because I think I learned pretty quick on, and just seeing people come and go too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it didn't take long before you were one of the old guys, even though you didn't realize it.
Yep.
I mean, 2 months on the line company, you're an old guy.
Oh, attrition
And,
goes real quick.
So,
What rank were you when you left the platoon?
I was still a PFC.
Okay. And you told us that you went to R&R and you met Janice,
Right.
and then you had to come back.
Well, actually, it was pretty easy because I didn't go to R&R until I was transferred to.
Okay.
It was the last 4 months of my tour
okay.
in Vietnam. 'Cause,
Okay.
I think it was mid to late July, July, August that I got dusted off and heat. Spent some time in the hospital and came back to company headquarters and getting ready to fly out. Had all my stuff packed up, ready to go. We got up in the morning, had our stuff, standing down at the chopper pad, getting ready to come back out. And I think I can't remember whether we were back out at Diamond or whether we were still at Shamrock, but it was, we got hit at Shamrock and lost 3 guys there. Lost some guys in booby traps there, but anyway, we got weathered in, didn't fly out, and loaded up our stuff, came back to company headquarters. They dispatched us out to do details around the division base camp. Ended up at brigade headquarters, banging out wooden sidewalks for the colonel. And while we're out there, one of the captains from the S1 shop came out, and there's 6, 8, 10 of us out there, and he says, "Anybody out there know how to type?" And it's like, okay, I'm not going to volunteer for this, but nobody raised their hand. I says, "I can type," and so called me in and had me start doing some typing for him, and got done at the end of the day, packed up our stuff, went back, had my stuff packed next morning, and getting ready to go out. Weather's clear, gonna head back out to you guys, and they pulled me out of formation. They said, "You've been transferred."
Right to that typewriter.
To the typewriter. And it was, and
Which actually, in the long run, turned out to be a pretty good deal.
yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I can't complain, but there was always a regret.
Oh, absolutely.
And you just wonder what's going on.
Yep.
And that was just before you guys made the push into Cambodia.
Yep.
And that was like August or
Mm-hmm.
something.
And the leaving the guys.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was just a horrible. I don't even know how to describe it. Especially when you're like, in my case, I was responsible for a lot of guys, And man, then Marquez came up to me, and we were on the Cambodian border, and he came up to me and said, "Mail run's coming in. You're on that chopper." Well, shoot, I had 11 months in the field.
Yeah.
I mean, and I should have been taken out probably a month before, mentally.
Yeah.
It wasn't getting good. And I said, "Really?" Yeah, and he says, "I don't have a job for you back there, but you got to go. I got to get you out of here." So, because they always promised you,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, if you're here 9 months, we'll get you a job in the rear." Well, that our platoon was always so short-handed, they'd never, we were never at full strength,
No.
so they wouldn't let anybody go, which I can understand. But yeah, that was a tough one. So you finished your tour in battalion,
Brigade.
or I'm sorry, brigade, and then when you got ready, when did you leave Vietnam?
Left that February.
Okay, yep, that's right, because that was 12 months. You came in and went out in February. Okay, and then what did you do? Oh, well, before that, did you get wounded in Vietnam?
No. Well, I didn't get a Purple Heart wound. I had the little flecks of shrapnel and
Yeah.
things like that everybody gets.
Sure.
The Band-Aid wound.
Sure, sure.
But never had a golden wound.
Okay, and how about awards or anything like that?
Got the Bronze Star for. I think we all got that for all those operations we
Okay.
did. And got my combat infantry badge.
Which was probably the most important.
That was a pretty good day.
Yeah.
Pretty good day at a stand down. And I got God, I can't remember. I got something out of brigade because I did a good job, and I think the Army Commendation Medal.
Yeah, yeah.
And then after that, there's a whole bunch of stuff. But one of the things that I did get when I left Special Forces was because we worked on some special things. We helped develop the training doctrine for the Air Force pararescue guys because they never had a combat doctrine.
Oh, yeah.
And I got a meritorious service award for that.
Now I'm going to
was-
back you up just one step. You come home from Vietnam.
Yep.
Janice is waiting with open arms.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to kind of get your head screwed on straight and get reoriented. At what point did you say to yourself, I've had so much fun in Vietnam that I want to stay in the Army?
It was, when I got home, we had a little bit of time together, and then I was stationed down to Fort Hood, Texas.
For the rest of your
For the rest of my
commitment.
tour. Yeah. And I became a tanker. As a matter of fact, I came back from Vietnam on a promotion list for E5.
Okay.
Got promoted to E4 while I was with the brigade, and came back on a promotion list, and never been on a tank. Got assigned to the company. I was on they promoted me to E5, and they made me a tank commander. Never been on a tank, but the learning curve was very fast. Learned everything I could. Learned how to maintain them and do that. Did a lot of spent a lot of time out on the range, gunnery range, and put a lot of shells and a lot of bullets down range.
Yeah. And then when you were done,
And,
after your 2-year commitment, then what did you do?
well, that's when the going back is that's when Janice and I were actually having a conversation about maybe I should reenlist because being at Fort Hood, it was actually pretty enjoyable because I wanted to be a mechanic. Now I'm working on big machinery.
Oh yes, yeah, sure.
And it was a lot of fun for me, but I was still gone a lot because we'd be out in the field for 2 and 3 weeks at a time. So once again, she's there and living just outside of Fort Hood, and I'm gone again.
Mm-hmm.
But we had the conversation, like, God, maybe I should reenlist. And but then it came to the realization, oh my God, I'm going to be 38 when I retire, and that's going to be pretty old. So we packed up our bags and came back home, and I went to school. Changed my ideas, and I think being in Vietnam made me, obviously you take a look at what your future is and what you've done, and you think, okay, maybe I can make a difference. You got to make a difference. And so I went back to school. I was going to be a teacher, shop teacher, but wanted to still do things with my hands, and I went to school and I graduated, and first kid in the Dietz clan to ever graduate from college. And here's a kid. I didn't know whether I was going to graduate from high school. As a matter of fact, I had to go to summer school to finish my high school.
Sure.
Take a summer school class because I was 1 credit short. So that far from being a high school dropout. But I had more fun hanging out with Janice and spending time at the lake with the guys and stuff like that than I did going to school.
I can relate to that.
But then I realized that there's got to be something more to life, and so I started pursuing that. And while I was going to school, I met a guy that was in one of my classes that was a commo guy in Special Forces, and we became pretty good friends. And I was actually looking for a reserve unit because in the 1970s, there's a lot of protesting and stuff going on, and I didn't like what I saw. And I got to thinking, maybe there's something I can do. I need to do something different, put something back. And I started taking a look at some different National Guard, Army Reserve units and things, but they weren't doing anything. And I didn't want to go to a drill and just sit around and pretty much do nothing or drive a truck.
The weekend.
Yeah. Anyway, I was talking to Johnny Bash, and I said, "Hey, John, I've been kind of looking." And he says, "Well, have you ever thought about Special Forces?" And I was like, "Okay, this is a joke." And I says, "No." I says, "That's kind of like above my
Pay grade?
not pay grade, but my focus, I guess."
Okay, yeah.
It was like out of reach. And it goes back to what I saw in Vietnam.
Oh, yeah.
And because these guys were on the pedestal, in my mind those guys were at the top of the heap. And he says, "No," he says, "I think you got what it takes to do this." He says, "You're going to have to go to jump school. You're going to have to go through the Special Forces training. You're going to, it's going to be hard, and there's going to be a lot of stuff you're going to do." But he says, "You got to have heart." And anyway, as time went on, he finally talked me into it, and I went, and I actually had to go through an interview and testing and doing all physical fitness testing and all the other stuff that goes with it before they would even say sign on the dotted line. And then they actually had to interview my wife because it's one of those things that, okay, now I'm going to be gone again. I've got to go to the training. I've got to, like I said, I've got to go through my qualification courses. There's a lot of studying that's going to go on, and like I'm going back to school. And but I decided to do it. I signed up, and that began my Special Forces career.
And then after that, is that when you got into police work?
Yes, because I started teaching, and I quickly came to the realization that this probably wasn't a good fit for me. The political climate in my mind wasn't there, and I guess I didn't have the liberal mindset to do that. And so, in the meantime, I met a lot of guys through the reserve unit that were police officers, and they said, "Hey,
Yeah.
have you thought about this?" And once again, I'm like, no, because like I had one foot in the juvenile system in Eugene as a kid, and but ultimately, guys talked me in to go for a couple of ride-alongs. I went for ride-alongs, and I said, maybe I signed
Sorry.
up. If I can go through Special Forces training, I can be a cop.
Yep.
And so I signed up for a reserve program just to see what it was about. And next thing I know, I've started sending out applications. And in 1979, I was hired by the Salem Police Department. Had a good career.
How many years?
32 years.
And you wound up as?
A lieutenant. So I was patrolman, motorcycle cop, worked in the schools with kids. Did
Did they have the DARE program up
They
here?
did.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't teach the DARE program.
Yeah,
but, they were in the schools and went back. I got promoted to corporal, back to patrol. Got promoted to sergeant. The one thing, my dream was I wanted to be a motor cop. I got to do that for 4 years, and then I said, well, I want to come back as a sergeant. I got promoted to sergeant. I got to go back to the motor unit as a sergeant, and but probably one of the highlights of my career is the fact that because of the stuff that I was doing in Special Forces, there was a lot of things that were changing in Special Forces, and I got to go back and do a bunch of stuff on direct action missions and things like that, and on how to clear buildings and things like that. Salem Police Department never had a SWAT team, and there was a lot of things that were happening all around the country involving police, and police agencies needed to rise to the occasion, have some kind of quick reaction force, and the Salem Police Department decided we needed one. And I was one of the first 6 guys that was selected to be on the SWAT team, to develop the SWAT team, and it wasn't a full-time position. It was collateral duty. And it's kind of interesting because of those first 6 guys on that Salem Police Department SWAT team, 3 of us were Special Forces. 1 was a Ranger, wounded out of Vietnam.
Wow.
And the other one was a paratrooper. And the last guy was a drill sergeant.
What are the chances of that?
And so
That's pretty incredible.
So anyway, and it just
you
kind of
guys
happened.
had a lot. You guys had a lot in common.
Right. And so the 3 of us that we got to put together a lot of the training. Went through training with the FBI and state police and with the military. And as a matter of fact, one of our active duty advisors was involved with Delta. Actually, before Delta, he was with a program called Blue Light, which was basically the development of the Delta Force. And so we got a lot of training from him and setting this up. And then we became a pretty active SWAT team. And a lot of good training and a lot of development. And we had some great results.
Okay.
So.
I'm going to go back, and I'm thinking about when you came back from Vietnam. Did you stay in touch with any of the guys you served with in Nam?
No. And I think part of that, part of that was because, like I said, I felt like I kind of left everybody. And I just kind of moved on.
Would you have known how to keep in touch with anybody?
No.
That was what I was getting at.
No.
Isn't that something, how we went over there alone, and we came home alone, and
Right.
somehow or another, we just didn't.
No, nobody kept in touch.
That's what I'm saying.
And I think it was exactly. I mean, everybody was going through the same thing, and you wanted to put that behind you, but it was so much part of your life.
Yeah.
But you can't.
Well, and the
And-
atmosphere in the States made
Oh,
you
yeah.
want to put it behind you even faster than that, because people weren't in favor,
Right.
of the war and GIs at that time. So,
And the other thing is I to me, it was therapy getting back into the reserves, getting into special forces, and a lot of the guys that were in the unit that were up there, they came off active duty and they served in Vietnam. These guys were the medics, the operations sergeants, they had key positions in Vietnam, doing stuff in Vietnam. Some of them doing working special operations groups, and one of my best buddies, also in the police department, he was a commo guy, and while he never got to Vietnam, he was working on the other side of the border in Laos.
Oh yeah.
And so, and I think that kept my ties strong. So we kind of all got together, and we talked about our service and the things that we did, and I think, like I said, I think that was our therapy.
Danny, I'd like to get your perspective on something. What is your definition of a hero?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't. I guess you kind of know it when you see it, but like I said, you and Marquez and the guy, these guys are, you guys are putting your life on the line for folks on a daily basis, and you're helping people through it, and going back to you, and this, I say this to everybody I know, is I learned a lot in leadership from people like you and Marquez, and you were a caretaker. You were a caretaker in Vietnam, and you're still a caretaker. You're taking care of us, and and that's something that comes in the heart, and and it's just somebody that's just dedicated to doing it right and making things right for everybody. And there's a lot of things that you can, just because we serve in the service doesn't make us a hero. And doing one dynamic thing in your life doesn't necessarily make you a hero. But I think is what you do on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I agree.
And I just, there's things, you can save somebody's life and you're a hero. But it doesn't end there. It never does.
Yep. And I know for a fact dads are heroes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Now, before we end the interview, is there anything that either I haven't brought up or we haven't talked about that you want to talk about Vietnam?
Well, I brought it up a little bit earlier that, you kind of wonder, like Ed Clemens, should he have been there? Should any of us have been there? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, the war was wrong, or, there's, that's for the politicians to say. We were just there to do what we had to do. And you go back and you look at the unit and the people that served, and especially those guys that served in a combat role while they were there. It's such an eclectic group of people, but it worked. But it worked. And the one thing, and I look at what's happening now, because I'm involved in a program now with it's called the ESGR, it's the Employer Support for Guard and Reserve, and I get to go work with groups, units that are getting ready to deploy, and we talk about employment rights and reemployment rights when they leave, when they go, when they're going off on drill, and try to provide support for them and give them resources so that if they do struggle with employers, because I had issues when I was in the reserve system, getting time off to go to drills or go to training, and I was gone to training a lot because of the position I was in. But so it's kind of helping them support that, And okay, put me back on track. I just like.
Well, no,
oh,
no,
but-
I'm just saying that, I just wanted to know if there was something in Vietnam,
But yeah,
you know,
it's,
and you pretty much,
and it's and so putting something back. But what I was going to say is that the difference between what's happening now and what happened to us, and you brought it up, is the fact that we were individuals. We weren't a unit. We were not
Exactly.
trained to work together. And I think as a result of that, we probably suffered more casualties because of that. And whereas now you take a look at a unit, they go as a unit, and they come back as a unit. They know each other. They're cohesive. They're a lot more successful about how they do things because that's what they train to do. I think the training they get now is much better than what we had. Obviously, the equipment's much better. But as with every war, there's been so many tremendous benefits that have come out of that. Training, equipment, medical advancements. It's amazing. And all that stuff goes into the community afterwards. And so you look at that, and there's always something good. And I try to look at the good and what's happening. And I'm not a negative person. I always look at something in the positive way, and I want to be a contributor. And so I've always tried to put something back, whether it was back into the military by staying in, or whether it was putting something back into the police department and developing programs and
Sure.
making things better. And I was one of the probably the most satisfying thing is training people, and you did that.
yep,
And I did that as a police officer. I mean, I look at all the people that I got to train in the police department, and now those guys are the
oh yes,
corporals and sergeants and lieutenants.
Sure.
And so you get to put something back, and I think probably that's the most important thing that I've learned in coming out of Vietnam is you got to put something back. You
Yeah.
can't just leave it at that. You got to tell the story. You don't have to tell the story, but you got to you bring back and you put something back in.
well, and I think that's why this whole project of oral history is so important, because each one of us each one of us that were there deserves to at least tell their story
Yeah.
and have their story recognized as something. So, Danny, let me tell you something. It is an honor to be here with you, and it was an honor to serve with you in Vietnam.
Absolutely.
So, thank you, buddy.
And and I got to like I say, thank you for making this. Making it possible that I'm even here.
Yep. Well, like I say, and I was going to say this earlier, and it's going to sound corny, but you'll always be that skinny Danny Dietz kid that came in
Yeah.
as a new guy. And I that sounds funny, but when I see you,
Yeah.
I still see him.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
I know we're done here. I was just going to ask one question. What was your interpretation, or can you talk about the rain in Vietnam? How did that affect you?
Oh, just the weather. I mean, just the weather as a whole. It was either hot and muggy, or total downpour rain. I mean, it just.
Did you ever
it's
have
like-
did you ever have a day in the rain where you just lost all? I've heard a lot of guys that
Discouragement?
just couldn't. They
Oh.
literally broke down. They couldn't take the rain anymore. It was so bad, and they got so cold, that it just mentally fatigued them.
That was one of the things that I've told people this, that it's 70, almost 80 degrees, and you're out on patrol, and all of a sudden the rain's hit, the monsoon's hit. So for the next hour you're being drenched. Okay, the rain's quit and still overcast and cloudy, but you go out and set up your ambush patrol, and you're freezing.
Evaporation.
All the evaporation, and you're just you're shaking in 80-degree weather at night, and people don't understand that. And you're you're almost at a point of hypothermic, and I've done Arctic survival training. I mean, I was in Alaska, 67 degrees below zero, but I never felt the cold that I felt in Vietnam, and you know, imagining that you're setting up for an ambush patrol on a rice paddy and water up to your neck. You know, it literally, and just you're in the water day in and day out and through the swamps, and your feet are never dry during the rainy season. And it's just, yeah. I mean, you are deprived. I mean, you don't get a shower for a month, you know, and then you do this. Yeah, you're out on patrol and you got a little break, and you come up on a bomb crater that's filled with water, and so you jump in to take a bath, and then afterwards. Now, I look at the pictures of me in a bomb crater one day, and I'm thinking, you know, that's probably the stupidest thing we ever did. Because what are all the chemicals in that water? You know, and you're sucking that up. Not to mention the Agent Orange, and but you know, we could be in the rice paddies one day and the jungles the next, and it's all different.